Let's start with a really simple question. Think about it for a second. Who is the safest person in the world? For most people, the answer just pops into your head, right? Your mother. It's biological. She is literally programmed to keep you safe, to keep you alive. It's like one of the most basic, fundamental rules of nature.
But what happens when that programming gets completely scrambled? When the one person who is supposed to be your shield is actually the one slowly killing you? And not with a weapon you can see, but with a spoon, with medicine, with love.
So, this unbelievable, terrifying paradox, it actually has a name. Today, we're going to dive deep into a psychological profile known as the Angel of Mercy predator. And the specific type of abuse they use? Well, it's a clinical condition called Factitious Disorder Imposed on Another. You've probably heard it called by its older, more famous name, Munchausen by Proxy.
All right, so let's get right into it. What exactly are we talking about here? What makes someone an angel of mercy?
Okay, so the clinical definition is pretty chilling. It's a form of abuse where a caregiver, and it's almost always a mother, deliberately makes someone else sick, or just pretends they are. Now, the goal here isn't usually to kill them. It's actually to keep them sick, forever. And why would anyone do that? Well, it's all about feeding their own deep psychological need for sympathy, for attention, for everyone to tell them how amazing and devoted they are.
And this quote, man, it just hits you right in the gut. The predator isn't some monster hiding in the bushes. The predator is the one holding the spoon. The danger isn't out there. It's right in your house, in your food, in the very hands that are supposed to be taking care of you.
To really truly understand how this is even possible, we have to look at probably the most famous and most disturbing case ever. It's a story where the public image of a perfect mother was a complete 180-degree fabrication.
So let's go back to Missouri, around 2008. There, you would have found Dee Dee Blanchard. And to everyone who met her, she was a hero. A single mom working tirelessly, completely devoted to her daughter, Gypsy Rose. And Gypsy, she was suffering from this laundry list of terrible illnesses. Their story was so inspiring, so tragic, that people opened their hearts and their wallets. They got charity, a brand new house, and just adoration from the entire community. And just look at this list of what was supposedly wrong with Gypsy. Paralyzed from the waist down, leukemia, muscular dystrophy, seizures, asthma, and on top of all that, her mom said she had the mind of a 7-year-old. So Gypsy's head was always shaved, she had a feeding tube, and she was never ever seen outside of a wheelchair. It was the absolute picture of a medical tragedy.
But behind that pink house, behind all the tearful interviews and the fundraisers, there was a lie. A lie so massive, so complete, that it's honestly hard to wrap your head around.
Because the truth was just mind-blowing. Gypsy wasn't paralyzed at all. She could walk perfectly. She never had cancer. She never had seizures. And she wasn't intellectually disabled. She was a healthy, smart young woman who was basically being held prisoner by the one person she was supposed to trust.
And that's the question that just hangs in the air, right? How? How did she pull this off? How do you fool dozens of doctors, an entire town, for literally years on end?
Well, she used what we can call the gatekeeper tactic. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, isolate the victim. Make yourself the only person they can rely on. Step 2, control the narrative. You become their only voice to the outside world. And Step 3, create the proof. You actually fabricate the physical symptoms. And a method she used were just meticulous. She told everyone their medical records were lost in Hurricane Katrina, which gave her a totally clean slate with new doctors. If Gypsy ever started to say something that went off script in a doctor's office, Dee Dee would just squeeze her hand, a silent threat to shut up. She'd shave Gypsy's head to make it look like she was getting chemo. She'd even put numbing agents on her gums to make her drool. And worst of all, she convinced surgeons to perform actual unnecessary operations on her own daughter.
I mean, you have to understand, this is so much more than just lying. This is gaslighting on an industrial scale. Dee Dee built an entire false reality for Gypsy. She was told day in and day out, you are sick, you are helpless, and if you ever try to tell anyone the truth, they will think you're crazy. It was just absolute psychological warfare.
Which brings us back to the biggest question of all. Why? I mean, what could possibly motivate someone to do this to their own child? The psychology here is both fascinating and deeply, deeply disturbing.
So Dee Dee fits the profile of a very specific type of narcissist. It's called vulnerable narcissism. See, your typical narcissist wants you to envy them, their money, their power, their success, but the vulnerable narcissist, they want your pity. They feed on sympathy. All that praise, oh, you're such a wonderful mother, you're a saint, that was her drug. She was literally addicted to being the hero in a tragedy.
And in that kind of twisted mind, the child stops being a human being. They just become a prop, a medical doll, as some have called it. Gypsy was a living doll for Dee Dee to use, to drug up, to get operated on, to put on display, all just to keep the applause, the sympathy coming.
But here's the thing, you can't hold back reality forever. As Gypsy got older, she secretly got online, and the walls of that prison started to crumble. She began to realize, wait a minute, I'm not sick, I'm a prisoner. She ended up meeting a guy online, Nicholas Gojan, and for the very first time in her life, she told someone everything. They became desperate for her to be free, and that desperation led to a truly tragic plan. On June 14, 2015, Nicholas Gojan came to the house and murdered Dee Dee Blanchard, and the Great Deception finally came to a very violent end.
Now, this story is obviously a shocking piece of true crime, but it's also a really important lesson. So the question is, how can we spot this kind of abuse before it gets to that point? Well, psychologists who studied cases like this have actually found some very clear patterns. You can think of it like a medical audit protocol, basically a checklist of red flags to help spot these angel of mercy predators. Okay, red flag number 1. The symptoms just don't make sense. They're all over the place, they're chaotic, jumping from one part of the body to another in a way that just doesn't line up with any known disease. But here's the real kicker. The symptoms almost always happen only when the caregiver is there. The kid might have a terrible seizure when mom is holding them, but then they're totally fine the second a nurse walks in. That kind of inconsistency, that's a huge tell.
All right, red flag number 2, doctor shopping. Think about it. If a doctor tells you your kid is perfectly healthy, you'd be thrilled, right? Relieved. Well, this kind of parent gets angry. They'll storm out and just go find another doctor. They hop from specialist to specialist, state to state, basically hunting for someone who will finally give them the diagnosis they want. It's a way to keep anyone from seeing the whole picture.
And the last one, number 3, is all about the parent's attitude. The parent of a really sick child is usually drained, scared, and overwhelmed. But this type of predator, they can almost seem excited, even happy, when they're talking about all the medical problems. They love using the complicated medical terms. They thrive on being the center of attention at the hospital. You can almost see them basking in all that sympathy. It's a performance, and they're loving the spotlight.
The whole story of Gypsy Rose is just a chilling reminder that the most dangerous monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the most loving person in the world, and it leaves you with a really unsettling question, doesn't it? If the person you're supposed to trust the most can pull off a deception this huge, what other lies might be hiding in plain sight?